Once upon a time, in a land where the sun ruled without mercy, there was a vast dry savanna stretching farther than the eye could see. The earth was cracked, the wind was hot, and the grass whispered warnings to anyone brave or foolish enough to enter. This land did not belong to humans. This was not a place meant for travelers. It was a place meant for survivors. Nothing lived here comfortably. Nothing stayed long without consequence. It belonged to speed, strength, and instinct. Yet, despite the danger, a group of hunters chose to cross it. They were not careless men. They were experienced, skilled, and determined. They had crossed forests, rivers, and mountains before, but this land felt different. Here, the sun did not hide behind clouds. The ground did not echo with birds. It whispered instead. One of them paused. He looked across the horizon, his eyes narrowing against the glare. There were no mountains close enough to promise shade, no trees tall enough to offer shelter, only distance. The group continued forward. They were not afraid yet. They had not learned what fear truly meant in this place. Not yet. As they moved deeper into the plain, the wind began to shift. Grass bent low, pointing in the same direction, as though guiding invisible movement across the land. Far away, dust rose in soft columns. Their thoughts were on water, on distance, on the promise of reaching the other side of the plain. But the land was already aware of them. In the open savanna, nothing moves unnoticed. Every step sends a message. Every shadow writes a signal across the ground. They believed they were walking alone. They were not. On the first day, the hunters noticed something unsettling. The animals were watching them, not with fear, not with curiosity, but with calculation. From a distance, cheetahs followed their movement. Lions rested under trees, their eyes half closed, yet never losing focus. Hyenas laughed at night, as if mocking the hunters' confidence. The men believed they were being observed as humans. They were wrong. To the predators, they were not men. They were movement. And movement meant prey. Cheetahs lay stretched along the shade of an acacia tree, their bodies low against the earth. Their breathing was slow. Their eyes were open. They did not chase. They did not rise. They observed. The land taught them patience. Nearby, lions rested beneath another tree, their heavy forms arranged in silence. Their tails moved occasionally, brushing the dust away from their flanks. Their ears turned toward distant sounds carried by the wind. They heard footsteps long before they saw bodies. Every vibration of the ground told a story. Every shift in dust spoke of movement. The predators did not see humans. They saw motion crossing open space. To them, these figures were no different from antelope drifting too far from the herd, no different from wounded animals limping across the plain. The hunters continued. It happened suddenly. One hunter walked ahead of the group, confident, scanning the land. The grass shifted. A blur of speed followed. The cheetah struck. There was no scream, only dust, panic, and silence. By the time the others reached him, it was too late. He was beaten and eaten by the cheetah. They watched the cheetah drag his dead body into the forest. They returned to the huts without victory. No meat, no songs, only dust on their skin and loss in their eyes.
The path back to camp felt longer than the journey out. Each footprint carried the weight of a missing brother. Each step echoed with the memory of the hunter who would never return. That night, fear entered their camp like an unwanted guest. Inside the camp, no one spoke, and by morning they understood something terrifying. The animals were not afraid of them. It continued. Over the next days, more hunters were taken. Weapons were laid down. Heads were lowered. Not because they were weak, not because they were slow, but because they were visible. That night, the eldest among them did not sleep. While the others rested in sorrow, his eyes stayed open, watching the fire fade into embers. He replayed every hunt in his mind, every fall, every scream swallowed by wind, every place where a man had vanished into dust. He asked himself no questions out loud, but inside him something began to move. Not an answer, not yet, only a change in the way he saw the land. By morning, the camp rose slowly. Grief still hung in the air like smoke, but the elder called them together. Not to hunt, not to travel, but to remember. They gathered in a circle. Drums were brought out. Feet touched the earth in rhythm. They danced for the fallen. They sang for the ones who had crossed into shadow. They lifted their arms to the sky, asking the ancestors to receive them. Dust rose with every step. Tears mixed with sweat. Pain mixed with honor. And as they moved together, something shifted among them. They were no longer just hunters. They were witnesses. Witnesses to a truth the land had been trying to teach them. It was not their weakness that killed them. It was how they moved through the world. The savannah had spoken, not with words, but with speed, with teeth, with loss. And though no one said it out loud, every heart in the circle felt it. Something had to change. One elder among them finally spoke. The animals don't see us as men. They see us as movement on the ground. That single sentence changed everything. If movement on the ground meant death, then the ground itself was the enemy. That night, around a dying fire, an idea was born. What if they left the ground? What if they made themselves taller than fear? What if they became something the animals could not recognize? They remembered old stories, ancient techniques used by their ancestors, stories of hunters who walked above tall grass, who watched predators from a height, who confused beasts by becoming something unnatural. And so they began to build. Using wood, rope, and pure desperation, the hunters crafted stilts, long wooden legs that lifted them far above the earth. Standing tall, they looked unnatural. Not animals, not prey, not human, something else. They stepped into the open land again, but this time, they were no longer shaped like prey. To the lions, there were no humans, only tall sticks moving across the grass, only shadows that did not crawl, only holes pressed deep into the earth where feet once were. The cheetahs watched from the heat. The lions watched from the rise of stone. Eyes followed motion, but minds found no meaning. No running bodies, no bending backs, no fear on the ground. What moved now was height, wood walking, wind carrying men. The stilt walkers laughed. They leapt into the air. They danced above the dust. They tested the land with joy. For the first time, the earth did not feel like a trap. They believed they were saved. They believed the hunt had ended. And survival is never finished, only delayed. From above, they could see danger before it reached them. From below, predators saw strange figures moving in ways they had never seen before. For the first time, the hunters felt hope. But the watchers did not leave. The lion stayed still. The cheetah stayed low. They did not see men anymore, but they saw patterns. They saw the marks in the soil. They saw the rhythm of movement. They saw the return of the tall shapes day after day. Something had changed, and change is never invisible to hunger. So the hunters waited, not with teeth, not with claws, but with thought. Because even when prey rises, the wild learns.
As they moved across the savannah on their stilts, they believed the ground had forgotten them. They believed the hunters had accepted the long sticks as trees. Cheetahs circled. Lions watched. The land held its breath. But this time, the predators hesitated. The air changed. The lions no longer watched in silence. They did not see humans. They saw movement without meaning. Tall shapes, thin legs, unnatural balance. Still, instinct pushed them forward. Their eyes narrowed. Their bodies tightened. To them, these tall shapes were no longer strange. They were movement. They were rhythm. They were something that returned. And something that returns can be hunted. One cheetah charged. The ground trembled. And then disaster. The cheetahs came first. Not with fear, but with speed. Dust rose behind their steps. Their long legs tried to keep their distance, but one foot met the earth too late. Wood slipped. Balance broke. One stilt walker lost balance. A body fell. Not from claws, but from height. And in the open land, a fallen man meant only one thing: death. The hunters froze. The cheetah did not. It launched forward, fast as fear itself. But the fallen man did not run. He did not scream. He raised the stilt like a shield. He struck the ground. Dust rose again. And then something changed. The others answered him. They stomped the earth together. They struck the soil in rhythm. They shouted as one body. Tall shapes moved in chaos. The savannah filled with noise, with motion, with something that did not belong to hunting. The cheetah stopped. They circled. They hesitated. Because predators understand prey, but they do not understand what refuses to flee. And what is not understood is feared. Predators fears what they do not understand. Slowly, the animals retreated, not defeated, not afraid, but uncertain. The elders lifted their fallen brother. They adjusted their stilts. They moved together slow, tall, united. Step by step, they reached the border. Behind them, the savannah returned to silence. And that day, survival learned something new. It is not height alone that saves you. It is standing together. Behind them, the land stayed quiet. Ahead of them, the path opened wide. They walked in line, long and steady. They returned with dust on their legs and answers in their minds. The fire waited. The food was shared. Laughter grows where fear had lived. They sat together, not as men who ran, but as men who understood. The land had tested them. The animals had watched them, and still they were here. The elder stood apart for a moment, his eyes following the horizon, not looking for danger, looking for tomorrow. What they found was not strength. It was not speed. It was not sharper weapons. It was a way of movement that the hunt could not read, a way of standing that the ground could not claim. They had learned how to pass through the wild without becoming part of it. And as the sun lowered itself into the grass, they walked home, long and quiet, their shadows stretched across the earth. The land would remember them, not as prey, not as beasts, but as those who changed the rules of being seen. In the wild, the one who survives is not the strongest, but the one who learns how not to be seen.